Fortunately, we're talking about suicide. Not a real fun topic, but there is a way to prevent suicide. We can do this. It's with positive thinking and positive talking. There is a way to help these individuals that are suffering from the desire to kill themselves. We can do that. And the way you do it is to pay attention to people's personalities. And if you see a personality change, you need to determine whether that individual might possibly injure themselves. We can do this. I've done it in the past. I have identified people that were suicidal. And all you have to do is pay attention. I've had arguments with other psychologists. And I was telling them, this person's fragile and there may be something wrong. I think we need to address it. And they said, let's leave it alone and see what happens. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that, because if something happens, then you're going to be wrong and I'm going to be right, and I would rather be wrong. I want to be wrong, okay? But we can do this, and all you have to do is pay attention to people. There's a lot of people that ignore other individuals, and that was a situation I was in. When I was at Ashford, I had oh God, he was so dumb. And I say he was so dumb, but he just didn't pay attention to people. He didn't see people. He didn't see who they were. He didn't say good morning to people. And sometimes all you need to do is say hello, and if they don't say hello back, you go, wait a minute, are you okay? And that's all you have to do. All you have to do is show them that you care, and sometimes that will stop them from committing suicide. Okay. Lots of different causes, lots of different reasons for suicide. Not everyone is at equal risk for suicide. There are strong gender and ethnic associations to suicide. Which group commits suicide more than any other? Which race commits suicide more than anybody else? Who's number one? Who's number one? Caucasians are number one. And we're going to see that they're not only number one as far as males are concerned, but they're also number one as far as females are concerned. And you can't get better than that. That's about as good as you can get. Native Americans are number two. So white people are number one and Native Americans are number two. So you need to be aware of the people that you're talking to. You need to care about them. Care about them enough to see who they are and see what's going on with them. And that's one of the ways to do it. Males commit complete suicide more frequently than females do. Females will attempt suicide more frequently than males. But males are better at it than females. Why? Why are guys so good at this?
Because they use guns.
They use more lethal means to kill themselves. If I decided to kill myself, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Hanging is a.
That's what I was going to come up to with the categories of how they end their life, like how they end their life. Like,
right.
There's hanging, there's gunshot,
right.
Drugs, walking off.
Right, walking off a cliff. That always works. Sometimes. Even when you shoot yourself, sometimes you miss. Sometimes you shoot yourself in the head and it doesn't hit anything that's that important. Don't shoot. People rarely commit suicide by shooting themselves any place except in the head. They don't want to feel it, so they shoot themselves in the head thinking that it will numb them. And they're right. It usually knocks you right out. If you shoot yourself anyplace else, you might miss. Of course, if you're using a shotgun, and we're going to talk about somebody that actually used a shotgun on themselves in just a second. Males succeed at suicide nearly 4 times the rate of females, and represent about 80% of the suicide deaths because they use more lethal means. They jump off of bridges, they hang themselves, they shoot themselves. More lethal means, if you take pills, you might not take enough. You might, and it's really odd because the human body, like I said, the human body wants to be alive. Well, when you shoot yourself, that's an extra hole in your head. But when you take pills, your body actually has the ability to shut itself down. so that it won't digest those toxins, and you actually save yourself. So there is a possibility that if you take drugs, of course, you're not going to take a lethal dosage, or that your body's not going to allow you the lethal dosage to get into your system. Although males complete suicide more often, females make nearly 3 times as many suicide attempts as males do. Suicide rates are much higher among whites and Native Americans. We already talked about that. Age is more of a significant factor in the likelihood of male suicide than female suicide. Males will commit suicide at a different rate, at different ages. Males will commit suicide as they get older. Women are less likely to commit suicide as they get older. Stressful life events. In one study, those who had attempted suicide reported 4 times as many stressful life events as did individuals in the general population sample, and 1.5 times as many as in the depressed sample. So one of the things that happens is maybe they really don't have as many stressful life events, but they think about them more. If you ask me about my stressful life events, I would laugh about being shot, I'd laugh about falling out of a helicopter, I'd laugh about all of these things. They don't seem like stressful life events to me. The fact that I've been married twice, you know, to some people this is really a stressful situation, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not stressful. So it really all depends on how you see things, how you read things. My mother and father died, I never had grandparents. You know, all of these things I could add up, I could pile them up and then jump off, put a rope around my neck and then jump off of that pile of whatever I'm jumping off of, that pile of shit that I just created. But I don't see it as a negative. Since I never had grandparents, I don't know what it's like to miss grandparents since I never had any. Anyway, so stressful life events, yes, but these are individuals that focus on these things. They think about these things all the time. There are 2 general types of events present more often in the lives of suicide attempters: interpersonal conflicts. And when I'm talking about interpersonal conflicts, I'm talking about lover's leap. I'm talking about breaking up with somebody. That's what I'm really talking about. The interpersonal conflicts usually have to do, it's not an argument with mom, it's not an argument with dad. It's this woman that you decided was the most important person in your life has left you, and now you're going to show her, by golly, you're going to show her, so you'll kill yourself. I don't know what that means, but anyway, we see this all the time. People break up with their significant others, and they attempt suicide. Now, maybe they didn't really mean to kill themselves. Maybe they just wanted to make a gesture, but they were successful at doing it. This happens a lot more with guys than it does with girls, because, like I said, they use more lethal means. Serious illness is another cause of stress with family members or themselves. Robin Williams was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, or fast onset Alzheimer's disease. And he was only in his 60s, so why in the world would he kill himself just because he developed this?
He didn't want to feel the changes as he was getting older, maybe.
Right. He just wanted one change. He didn't want all these incremental changes where he's losing his memory and he's not as fun as he used to be.
So he wasn't what do you call that? He didn't have bipolar, or he wasn't depressed?
He wasn't depressed. Robin Williams had a problem with drugs. He'd had a problem with drugs ever since he was more young. Used a lot of cocaine. Oh, okay. Okay. Used a lot of cocaine, but he had been clean for what, 15 years? And then he went back to rehab. He went back to rehab, and everybody was going, why is he going back to rehab? This doesn't make any sense. He's been clean for 15 years, and he's clean right now. And he was clean right then. But what had happened was, cocaine, as we talk about these drugs and what they do to your brain, they permanently changed his brain, and that's one of the reasons why he was having early onset Alzheimer's disease. It also causes Parkinson's disease. Who else do we know with Parkinson's disease? Linda Ronstadt has just developed Parkinson's disease. She can't sing anymore. And she was a real bad cokehead once upon a long time ago.
Do you think that meth is going to cause And we're gonna have like a huge epidemic.
Same
of it.
game. It's going to be the same game. It's going to be bad. And all we can do is anticipate. And so when we see some rocker, all of a sudden he can't function at 56, we know why. Who do we know that just came down with Alzheimer's? They just institutionalized him. Glenn Campbell, you know, Wichita lineman. Galveston. Yeah, his Alzheimer's was really bad. Why? Well, he snorted a lot of cocaine when he was younger. And you know, you got to pay the piper sometime. And these guys are paying the piper in their 50s and 60s. So that's just one way to. I'm sorry. That's just the way it works. David Bowie just died. How old was he?
60.
My age. He was my age. He's dead, and I'm still alive. Why is he dead and I'm still alive? Well, I didn't snort any cocaine when I was younger. I wasn't that stupid. I didn't use crystal meth. So he's dead and I'm still alive. Alan Rickman just died at 69, I think. Why is he dead and I'm still alive?
Boring, Bruce.
I know, I'm so damn boring. Oh, man. I know it's tragic that I'm so boring, but only for my first 2 lives.
That's why you're still alive.
That's why I'm still alive. But I'm boring as hell. And I'm not going to take it anymore. Yeah, I'm boring. I'm sorry. Feel sorry for my wife. She's got to live with me like every day. It's got to be the saddest thing in the world. God, he's so boring. I can't stand it. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is from 2005, as you can see. We're talking about suicide here. You can see females commit suicide at the lowest rate. Which group commits suicide the least? Actually, it's Hispanics. So I've decided to change my race and my gender, because females, Hispanics are the happiest people in the United States. So that's.
I can't believe that.
I can see that.
I'm going to change my race and my gender. We'll see
I
how.
think it's because they pray constantly, and that prayer isn't really to a direct entity or God. You know, it's kind of just releasing.
Well, it's kind of, they pray to Mother Mary, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's a female deity.
But not all Hispanics do, though. There are some that are still native in aspect and we.
When we say Hispanics, we're talking about a lot of different people, right? Okay, we're talking about a lot of different people from a lot of different places. It turns out that the people that commit suicide the least, the happiest people in the world, come from Mexico. When we talk about Puerto Ricans, we're talking about a suicide rate and a happiness rate that's very close to Caucasians. I know. This is kind of interesting. And we really don't have statistics on everybody else because there's not enough of everybody else. Cubans are pretty good at being happy. Cubans are very bad at committing suicide. But that's primarily Mexican Americans, actually. So, I know. Just a thought. So, if you want to convert, want to become a trans, I'm going to trans into being Hispanic. I guess I'll have to do a better job of it. Habla en Espanol, which I'm not very good at. I took it in high school and college, but I'm really not very good at it. I need to practice more. And then change my gender to female, so we'll see what happens. Francis is excited. Maybe I won't be so bored, Francis. What do you think?
There you go.
Beckler in 1979 studied 127 cases of suicide and proposed that suicidal acts could be grouped into 4 categories according to their meaning to the person. Suicide represents an escape from an intolerable situation. Somebody broke up with me, now they left me, and they're never coming back. Intolerable situation. For some, suicide is an act of aggression, and this, of course, would be a suicide that you committed to punish your parents. It's an act of aggression. Suicide can be an act of sacrifice or in a relation to some higher values. And that one's a little confusing to me. Soldiers will sacrifice themselves for their unit. Suicide performed in the context of games or undergoing an ordeal in order to prove oneself, and I'm not exactly sure what that has to do with, but Jeff understands this because you play video games. Right? Do they do that? They kill themselves because of the games? Oh, wait a minute, there's that game where if they commit suicide, they win. Isn't that some strange game?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, what the hell's going on? Who are these people? Evidently people that know how to have fun better than I do. Most widely supported indicators, and this is something that you need to think about. And this is when I told you that we can stop this stuff just by paying attention. This is the attention that I want you to pay to people. Not just to some people, but to all people. These are the people that hide in the back of the room, that aren't sitting in front. There you go. These are the people that you never pay attention to. These are the people you need to pay attention to because these are the ones that are more likely to commit suicide. Not Francis and Jeff because they're in front, but the people in the back. The people that never say anything, the people that nobody knows their name. These are the ones
And
we need.
then nowadays too, one of the suicide signs is, you know, like if you have a Facebook page and you see them on Facebook posting stuff, you know.
Right, negative stuff.
Yeah, stuff, you gotta take that into consideration and not just think, oh, you know, well, he's having a hard time, I just won't comment or like
Right.
or anything. You actually have to step in because we have to do a lot of interaction down at the door,
Right.
you know. And
We need to pay attention.
Yeah.
All we need to do is pay attention. And we can stop all this. Well, we can stop some of it. Previous suicide attempt, if you know this individual has attempted suicide before, you need to keep an eye on this guy. The strongest single predictor of any suicidal activity is if they've tried it before. Contemplated method at hand, if these guys have different ways of doing it, hanging, they've got ropes in their room, they've got a weapon in their room, this is a good indicator that this individual is thinking about contemplating suicide. There was an author by the name of Kurt Vonnegut. And Vonnegut, when he was an author and he wrote novels. And in his novels, there wasn't that much suicide. But when he wrote his biography, and he wrote biographies at different junctures during his career, he admitted that his mother had committed suicide, so it was a viable option. His mother had attempted suicide, so it was a viable option for him. And every day at dusk, he would go down to the basement and contemplate how he was going to kill himself. Now this guy lived to be 88 years old. But he had to talk himself out of it every day. And he knew that he could commit suicide anytime he wanted because there was a rope down there. He had a gun down there. He had means of committing suicide. Now, these instances when we will actually might potentially kill ourselves come up from time to time for these individuals. But they're relatively short periods of time. If they have the means, they'll do it. If they don't have the means, they won't do it. They have to drive down to Bosch's, and we can't buy ammunition at Bosch's, kid. Drive down to Ace in Chinley. If you have to drive down to Ace in Chinley and buy ammunition in order to load your gun so that you can kill yourself back here at Saley, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Because by the time you get down there, you're going to decide to go to Burger King. It's a positive thing. You're going to do something positive. Now all of a sudden, then you get sick because, well, we won't talk about getting sick. But you're not going to do it. If it takes too much, you're not going to do it. So contemplate method at hand. If you've got and this is one of the problems with everybody being armed and dangerous. If they've got a gun on their hip and they are so depressed that they think that they should shoot themselves right now, they've got a gun to do it with. If I decided to shoot myself, my goodness, I don't know. I'd have to drive to Gallup to buy a gun to begin with. Then I'd have to drive to Ace to get ammunition. I can't buy a gun in Gallup. Oh, it'd take me several days to get my gun.
Did you see
Because you
that?
don't live in New Mexico. we live in
I've never
Brazil.
been there, Arizona.
Did you see that the other day? I think it was yesterday. They had a murder-suicide in Walmart, the parking lot.
Oh, yeah, I saw
Did you
that.
guys see that?
That's so exciting.
Is that real, or is that just?
Was it on
fake
TV?
report?
Yeah,
It was on TV?
yeah, it was on the news. It was in Albuquerque, wasn't it, I think?
Oh,
No,
it was in Gallup.
It was in Gallup? Okay.
At the Walmart? they
I
said?
saw it on
The
the news.
vehicle was gonna get repoed, and when they went to, to do everything, they realized that those people were in there,
Mhm.
and it was a murder-suicide. The guy shot his girlfriend and then killed himself. I don't know how long they were out there, but.
Crazy stuff. If they hadn't tried to repo the car, they'd still be sitting out there, and nobody would have paid any attention to it. Paying attention, there you go, Jeff. We have to pay attention. Contemplated method at hand. Male gender, males are more likely to commit to succeed in committing suicide. Hopelessness, if you can detect there is hopelessness in this individual, then of course they're more likely to attempt suicide. It's a feeling of hopelessness. There is nothing I can do. Life is over with, and as I know it. So there's no place I can go. Hopelessness. Diagnosis of mood disorder or schizophrenia, along with anorexia nervosa, epilepsy, personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. These conditions are associated with increased risk of successful suicide. I grew up with a guy that had epilepsy when he was 23 years old. Just after his twins were born, he committed suicide. He went out to that redwood that you can drive through? I guess it's fallen down now, but yeah. He parked his car in that tree and killed himself, shot himself. As odd as that sounds, I don't know. Anyway, he shot himself in there. Previous psychiatric admissions, especially multiple admissions, these people are very susceptible to suicide. So these are the ways we just need to pay attention to these people. We need to know who they are. We need to understand people. We need to talk to people. We need to make sure we know who they are, so that when we see them, we know if they're okay. And that's why I say hello to everybody in the hallway.
And sometimes
And I'll tell you what, I was at NAU this weekend and nobody said hello to me. The whole campus is going off them. No, just kidding. I couldn't get anybody to talk to me. My God. Did I tell you that I told you that I flirted with the waitress at Texas Roadhouse, and she didn't pay attention to me? Oh, man. Now I'm suicidal. When I got home, my wife didn't pay any attention to me. What's going on here? I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I said, and sometimes people who commit suicide, they don't really want to, and it's an accident that they successfully did it.
Right. They're making an attempt. They're reaching out for people. They want people to acknowledge them, and sometimes that's all it is. There was a movie that they made where they were looking at all these children, and at the beginning of the movie they said one of these individuals is going to commit suicide, and everybody had problems, and everybody was doing this and this and this, and it turned out to be the quietest one was the one that committed suicide, because nobody paid attention to her. So she committed suicide. Slit her wrists at the end of the movie. I can't remember the name of that movie. It was really kind of interesting though, watching all of these different individuals and trying to figure out which one was going to do it. They all had means, they all had contemplated suicide, but the one that actually committed suicide was the one that nobody paid any attention to at all. And that's why I say we need to pay attention to people. One is usually intensely suicidal for only a short period of time. This is what I was saying. If you have to drive to Bosch's in order to off yourself, you probably won't. I'm not going to tell you any suicide stories. They're all too ugly. If that time can be gapped by the support of others, the crisis will pass, and that's what we need to do. We need to be the guy that says hello. If this individual thinks that they're invisible, then we need to show them that they're not invisible. So we need to pay attention to everybody. The aim of suicide prevention is to assist a person contemplating suicide to consider other alternatives and direct the person to resources for psychotherapeutic or other forms of help. Are these people mentally ill? And the answer is probably not, except for that strange group that have been institutionalized over and over again. They're probably not mentally ill. This is not, and there are branches of psychology that do not believe that suicide is not a viable option. Sometimes it is a viable option. Wow. Sometimes it seems like the only viable option. We've all seen the movie, what's the one at Christmas time, where he jumps off the bridge to get the insurance money so he can pay off the bank because, what is that movie? It's a Wonderful Life. Okay. Okay, now I've got a group of celebrity suicides to show you. It's a Wonderful Life. And it did turn out to be a wonderful life because he realized that everybody loved him, that there were a lot of people that loved him. And this is Robin Williams, and he hung himself really in a strange manner because he hung himself with his belt from the door. And that's not the easiest thing in the world.
From the door?
Yeah, it was attached to the top of the door, so he had to, yeah.
Pulling, right?
No, what happened was he had to fall forward, and when he fell forward, he passed out. And when he passed out, he strangled himself. Yeah. This is Chris Benoit. He was a wrestler with the WWF, I think. Yeah. He hung himself after he murdered his wife and his son. And I already talked about Robin Williams, of course, was a cocaine addict once upon a long time ago, but it did mess his brain up to some extent. And of course, that's why he developed the Alzheimer's disease, and then eventually, of course, he decided to kill himself. Benoit, of course, was on steroids most of his adult life, and of course, that makes you a little insane as well, and that's why he eventually killed himself. There are still people out there, and this is the biggest problem with suicide. People will not admit that it's happened. Oh no, it was just a mistake. He was cleaning his gun and it went off. And this is the biggest problem with suicide. I know. If we were more realistic about this, if we were more realistic, then we would show that we cared and we could stop it more readily. But of course, people are in denial. One problem is, of course, if you are Catholic and you commit suicide, you can't be buried in a graveyard that is a holy graveyard or whatever they call it. Okay. Anyway, and this is a problem because we need to be aware that this is happening and we need to be cognizant that this is a possibility. But one of the problems that you have if you're dealing with a population that's in denial, we're going to have more and more and more suicides because they're not going to deal with the problem. They're not even going to look at the problem. They're going to pretend it's not a problem. And of course, this is really kind of a serious situation. Steroids in WWF, golly, I would guess they're all on steroids. Maybe this is something we need to look at. Kurt Cobain, of course, he's the one that took a shotgun to his own thorax, which isn't the easiest shot to make, of course. For this reason, of course, people are saying, oh no, he was murdered. I'm not exactly sure who would have murdered him, but Kurt Cobain, of course, he was also used drugs to an extent.
Where's your thorax at? Is that here?
I'm sorry? Oh, no, the thorax is here.
Oh.
Yeah, he shot himself in the thorax. I think he shot himself in the stomach, but I tried to look it up, and of course everybody's gone on the internet and changed everything around, and now you can't figure out where he shot himself. I was so upset. Maybe I wasn't. Okay, Marilyn Monroe. She took a handful of barbiturates, and she probably would have been okay, except she took it with a bottle of champagne. And of course, that's the alcohol plus barbiturates, synergistic effect, and it was enough to kill herself. Now, there's not that many celebrities who have killed themselves. You may or may not remember this guy. He was on, what is that island? Fantasy Island, thank you. Yeah. The plane, exactly. He shot himself in the head because he couldn't find any work, and his second wife had just left him or something. Anyway, those are the suicides that I have, and that is the end. Does anybody have any questions about this stuff? I know this is really fairly traumatic. Talking about this Maybe I do it in a little bit too easy a manner. Maybe I should be more serious about it, but it seems to me like we can fight this, we can do this. The reason I'm not up north, the reason I'm not still teaching at Fort Belknap is because I was trying to do something about suicide. And I got crossways with the wrong people, and that's the reason I'm not there anymore. I was trying to do research to help them, and I was actually doing research to help them. It was positive psychology is what I was trying to promote, and they were saying, no, deal with alcohol. No, talk about the drug abuse up there. No, I wanted to say something positive. Anyway, that's why I'm not there anymore. That's my excuse anyway. I had a great time up there, trying to help, and it didn't work. So, but like I said before, while I was there, the suicide rate did decrease. After I left, it increased for a while, and then it went down again. So we're at that juncture. But it's a very Catholic
I did notice
reservation.
on that side, a lot of the natives did kill themselves, or did a lot of suicide, you know? I'm not saying my tribe doesn't do it, but we don't really have it there, you know?
Relationships. It's always a relationship. I had a friend a student that it was about 2 years after I left, he walked out in front of the semi. You know, wow, it's not a good way to go. At night, so the guy couldn't see him, dressed in black. Dressed in black, walked out in front of the semi. I know, he's a good student, great basketball player, really good, tall. You know how tall you guys are up there. Yeah, okay. They're tall too. Okay, let's talk about kids, the little guys. We're going to talk about neurodevelopmental and disruptive disorders, and of course most of this has to do with small people, with infants and children. In the DSM-4, these conditions were considered within a larger category, disorders of infancy, childhood, and adolescence, but then they changed everything. Of course they changed everything for the DSM-5. That made you buy a new book, so they changed it. They have 2 new classifications: neurodevelopmental disorders spanning childhood and adolescence, and disruptive impulse control, and conduct disorders created by merging the impulse control dysfunctions with the disruptive conditions of childhood. Okay. I know, we forgot. Okay, neurodevelopmental disorders. The neurodevelopmental disorders, intellectual disability, of course, we used to refer to this as mental retardation. We don't anymore, of course. That was pejorative. So because it was embarrassing to people to be referred to as mentally retarded, we changed it to intellectual disability. Eventually, of course, this will become a pejorative as well. Of course, we used to call these individuals morons, and Cretan is something totally different. But we had different names for them. And of course, every time we adopt a name, eventually it becomes part of the nomenclature of the entire population. And at that stage, of course, we have to change the name because it has become pejorative. One of the things we discovered from World War I is that when we gave them IQ tests, all of the soldiers coming in, one of the things that we discovered was that their IQ was probably somewhere in the 70s range. That was the average IQ of the soldier during World War I. And we tried to determine, is this really true? Do we really have that many not real bright people in the United States? And the answer was no, that wasn't true. The IQ test was flawed. One of the things that they wrote about after World War I was that the common soldier in World War I was a moron, and that was the term of the time. Of course, we've changed that term. We don't use the term moron anymore, but that's what we determined. Then we realized that one of the things we were doing, we were counting off points if they couldn't read. And of course, they couldn't take the test. They had to take the picture test, the beta test, instead of the alpha test. So we changed everything. Anyway, intellectual disability. We also changed the way that we determine intellectual disability. Once upon a time, an IQ test was all we gave them. Now there has to be some other problem besides a low IQ. Specific learning disorders is another neurodevelopmental disorder. motor disorders, communication disorders, autism spectrum disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These are all the neurodevelopmental disorders. So the first one we're going to talk about is disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. There are several different categories of this. Oppositional defiant disorder is for a very young person. An individual, as they are growing up, as they start to be able to talk, if they are always arguing with adults, especially adults that aren't their parents, then they may be diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. Of course, the individual that they come in contact with first is the individual at pre-K, I guess, or maybe the kindergarten teacher, or maybe the first grade teacher or the second grade teacher. When I was in school, we didn't have kindergarten and we didn't have pre-K. And now, how in the world did we ever get through school without kindergarten?
Do they outgrow this though?
Oppositional defiant disorder, yes, sometimes they do. Hopefully they do. Okay. If they don't, then we diagnose them with conduct disorder. Oh, and these are the kids that are doing all this interesting stuff like getting angry at the wrong time and having to leave the room. These are the individuals that you can't stop them from stealing things, or the individuals that keep starting fires. The antisocial personality disorder triad is known as the McDonald triad, and one of them is enuresis, which is wetting the bed. Another one is pyromania. In other words, they have a fascination for fire, and they tend to start fires all the time. That's two. The last leg is, what am I thinking? Oh, torturing small animals. Torturing small animals. Because they seem to not understand that some things need to be held and cuddled. And we have this natural idea that we're supposed to hold things and pet them and cuddle them. And this is what we do with our babies, right? And this is oxytocin coming out of our brains, telling us that we need to hold this thing and take care of this thing. And that's what we do with our babies, of course. And if this individual isn't pumping enough oxytocin through their brains to know that they shouldn't strangle, they shouldn't pull the cat's legs, the kitten's legs off. Now we got a problem, because this select individual will be torturing animals for the rest of their lives. And maybe he will grow up to torture people in the same way. So this is known as the McDonald triad. Unfortunately, of course, they named it before McDonald's restaurant, so it doesn't have anything to do with Ronald McDonald. I hope. Anyway, okay, intermittent explosive disorder. This is where they get angry at strange times. Kleptomania is where you can't stop them from stealing things, and then pyromania. If anybody knows my dog, Frances knows my dog. That dog's a kleptomaniac. She comes home with stuff. I mean, she comes home with pots and pans. She comes home with other dog food bowls. She came home with a doll the other day. A perfectly good doll. I don't know who she stole it from. Some kid is missing her doll.
I'm missing a doll.
You're missing a doll. Is it one of those freaky dolls with the really goofy faces? She didn't chew it up. She hasn't chewed it up yet. She came home with an ice tray the other day. Where did she?
I heard someone say once, like, oh, the rabbit, the cats are so cute, I just want to squeeze it.
Until it pops.
Yeah.
Not good. That's not good. We can't squeeze the kittens. Neurodevelopmental disorders onset is during the period of biological development before the brain and nervous system are complete, yet they are quite varied in their symptoms, etiologies, and treatments. Boys are much more at risk than girls in several of these categories, and there's a reason for that. It's sex-linked. What are we talking about? Well, what we're talking about is that the ova gives you an X chromosome, and the sperm either gives you an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. And if they give you another X chromosome, then it probably cancels out any problems you have on the ova. But if it's a Y chromosome, it's much, much smaller. It's like a third the size of an X chromosome. So there are a lot of areas on the X chromosome. If there's a problem with that with that X chromosome. If there's a flaw in the X chromosome, it's not going to be canceled out by the Y chromosome. So we see a lot of boys with these problems that girls don't have. Very infrequent for girls. You have to get two people with exactly the same genetic flaw in order to get a female with the same problem. So sex-linked hemophilia, for example, is sex-linked. And for that reason, males get it so much more than females, because you have to get two people with the hemophilia trait to reproduce in order to get a female with the hemophilia trait. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so a lot of these problems are on the X chromosome. So it's the mother's fault. No, I'm just kidding. It is the mother's fault. But let's not talk about how much it's the mother's fault. It was her chromosome, and his chromosome couldn't cancel it out. And that's why boys are more at risk than females. Rett syndrome was removed from the DSM-4. Rett syndrome is a syndrome where the female brain, this only happens to females, it's really kind of interesting. But what's happening? The head doesn't grow properly. It's small in size, and the individual rubs their hands all the time. And they have an intellectual disability, and that's Rett syndrome.
Is that like that mosquito?
Zika virus?
Yeah, Zika virus.
No, that's what is the word? Their brain, yeah, their skulls don't grow properly. Sometimes they don't grow at all. Sometimes they don't have any brain tissue at all. That's the problem with the Zika virus. No, it's a totally different situation. This happens to both boys and girls, or that happens to both boys and girls, and Rett syndrome only happens to little girls. But they rub their hands, and they'll rub their hands raw. And they don't stop. You know, despite the fact they have sores on their hands, they'll continue to rub their hands. As horrible as that is. It can cause mental disorders rather than now it's viewed as a condition that can cause mental disorders rather than a mental disorder itself. And the reason it is seen as a condition is because the skull actually doesn't expand. And since the skull can't expand, that's causing mental disorders. It's not the fact that they have a mental disorder otherwise. Intellectual disability is diagnosed when there is evidence that intellectual abilities are significantly below average. Important adaptive skills are also impaired. And of course, the second aspect is far more important than the IQ now, is the fact that their adaptive skills are impaired. In the old days, all we did was look at the IQ score. And if you have watched the movie Forrest Gump, you know that Forrest took the test, and he took the test over again, and then his mother had to sleep with the guy that gave the test in order to get him into school. I thought that was the best part of the movie. That and Elvis, where he teaches Elvis how to dance. The IQ score must be among the lowest, 2.5% of the population, and that means it has to be below 70 or less. Level of adaptive functioning is assessed across 3 domains: conceptual, academic, social, and practical. And in the old days, of course, this is all we took. But now we're looking at the entire individual and them in a social environment. There must be adaptive dysfunction in at least one of these domains that results in failure to acquire normal milestones in personal independence and social responsibility. Language communication, academic abilities. Of course, this is the only aspect that has to do with the IQ test. Language communication, independent care skills, money management, and social judgment. And of course, at that stage, we will diagnose these individuals with having an intellectual disability. The deficit in adaptive function must be evident in multiple environments and require ongoing support by others. We can't just say that it has to be at home. It also has to be in a social situation in order for us to diagnose this. Deficits that require ongoing support must also be present in at least one area of adaptive daily functioning across multiple environments. I have no idea why I put that up there. The lady passed out, standing at attention. I don't know. It has something to do with something, but I don't remember what it is. Yeah, okay. Intellectual disability can be specified as mild, moderate, severe, or profound. As I said before, in the DSM-4, we just determined this by IQ scores, but now, of course, there has to be an adaptive impairment that takes place in order to diagnose somebody with an intellectual disability. The incidence of intellectual disorder may be 1% of the population, with males diagnosed more often than females. Why? Well, maybe this has something to do with the X chromosome again. Individuals with IQ less than 65 to 75, 2 standard deviations below the mean, who show significant impairment in adaptive functioning, meet the criteria for intellectual disability. In the past, of course, cut off at 70, but now if you're in that range and you have some kind of a social impairment, some kind of an impairment, we will diagnose you with intellectual disability. Individuals who score between 70 and 85 may meet the definition for borderline intellectual functioning. Okay, but if they have no impairments and they seem to be getting along okay in society, we will probably not diagnose them with intellectual disability. So what does this mean if we say that somebody has intellectual disability? In this case, of course, what we will do is put them in special education classes. And this is huge because this is a massive movement in the United States. We need to educate all individuals in the United States, and of course, whether you can get into a special ed class or not has a lot to do with whether you will be able to function in the future. Okay. Distribution of IQ scores in the general population, as you can see, it's a bell curve, as what we refer to as a bell curve. We're all here. We're probably all here. The reality is that if you don't have an average IQ, it's really hard to make it in college classes. High schools, if we looked at the IQs of all the individuals that went to your high school, it would probably be almost identical to this. There were some kids in special ed, and they were these individuals over here. There were some people in the gifted program, and there are these people over here. Now, as you can see, we have an equal number of people with intellectual disability as we have geniuses, or individuals in the gifted program. What does it mean to have an IQ above 130? What does that mean? I keep talking about IQ scores. What does it mean? I have a brother with an IQ of 160. He's never held a job in his life. He's the biggest bum in the world. Oh, wait a minute, I'm on tape. He was a very unsuccessful individual. How can I say that? He retired as a lieutenant colonel of the United States Army. I don't know if that means anything. Not to insult the Army. He had an IQ of 160. Every time he found a problem, he solved it. How many people like that? Well, not very many. Most bosses don't want somebody working for them who is actually smarter and can solve problems better than they can. What does it mean to have an IQ right here? I have lots of relatives who are geniuses, have IQs higher than mine. And these people have never done anything in their whole lives. They've lived in trailers all their lives. They've never done anything. They've lived off of welfare. And they think they beat the system because people give them stuff. The government gives them stuff. And if you can get them to go to school, they do very, very well. But the problem is they're so lazy, and I almost used the F word. I really did. They are so lazy, you can't get these jackasses off their butts. And they all live with their mother, which is really kind of cool, but it's not even a double wide, it's a single wide. Okay. Anyway, so what does this mean? They've got IQs in the 150, 160 range. What does it mean? It just means potential. That's all it means. You can be the smartest person in the world, unless you live up to your potential, you're still a bum. I don't know, you're like my relatives. Biggest jackasses in the world. I'm glad my IQ's not that high. Because I might be a bum too, trying to figure out how to beat the government. By golly. I need a social security number so I can get my welfare check. Bastards. Lazy bastards. The majority, perhaps 85% of those with intellectual disability have mild intellectual disability. I don't care if they listen to my tape. These people are smart enough to figure out who I am, I think. They're really smart, but they're dumb. They're so stupid. They dropped out of junior high school. I mean, they're that stupid because they were so much smarter than the teacher. Ask them. Oh, she didn't understand me. No, she didn't understand you, you big jackass. You gotta learn how to get along with people. Their subnormal intelligence becomes apparent during the school year, and they tend to fall behind their age group. With persistence, they can learn academic skills roughly comparable to the 6th grade level by their late teens. This is 85% of the people that are diagnosed with intellectual disability. So most of the people with intellectual disability are relatively functional. Relatively functional. They can do things. They're better than my brilliant relatives who don't do anything but sit on their cans. It pisses you off too, doesn't it, Francis? You're paying for these people to get their welfare checks. No, you're not. They're in Indiana. With extended education and assistance, independence in several areas can be achieved, but ongoing support is needed for these individuals. You need to pay attention to them. You can't let them go. You need to watch them to make sure everything is okay. Because sometimes they know things that you don't know, which is
Well,
kind of...
isn't that basically all of our kids who are over the age of 18, you know?
No, not really. My daughter went to college. Geez, I think she's called me 3 times since she graduated.
Well,
She's 48 years
well,
old.
like with my kids, you know, my daughter's 21 and my son is 18, and it just seems like everything is just, the parenting has just started.
They
Literally.
just want you to be part of the decision-making process. I know. At least they're not living in your house, are they?
One is.
One is.
He graduates from high school though this year.
Go.
My daughter, she's getting.
He's still in
her
high school. You're
degree
still
next
supposed to take
year.
care of this kid.
Well, I know, but you know,
He'll leave.
they're just buggy.
He doesn't want to be.
Just
Yeah, he's
kidding.
buggy. They're buggy.
No, I was just kidding.
I haven't heard that since I was up north. They're buggy.
I was just kidding.
No, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. My son wanted to be he thought he was pretty. So he wanted to be an actor, he wanted to be a model. He went out to, first he went to New York, then he went to Hollywood. Oh, gee, Christmas. And of course, along the way, he's asking me for more and more money, and so I'm giving him more and more money. But then he lived out in California for an extended length of time. I mean, and he's getting into his 30s and 40s. And he's still out in Hollywood trying to be an actor. Of course, the probability of breaking into acting is fairly remote. But he was always fairly functional to the extent that he made enough money to pay his rent, bought his own food. He almost starved to death in New York. Worked at a strip joint in New York.
My friend said her son, he dropped out of high school because he has anxiety
Oh.
when he gets into the classrooms. But if I look at it, I think he does have this intellectual disability because since the day I've met him, he has never completed a grade, and that's like since 6th grade, you know.
That's a possibility.
And the mother enables him all the time, and so she said,
But you're not enabling your kids.
Yeah.
They're going to be fine. They're going to move out of the house. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I was hoping he'd get somebody pregnant, but he never did, so. I wanted grandkids. I still do. I want grandkids. He's got a girlfriend. If he can't talk her into getting, she's his fiance now. Oh, wait a minute. He might look at this. He doesn't want to hear me say that. It makes him mad. He's a good kid. Your kids are fine. Don't worry about it. They're going to move out on their own. They're going to be just like all the other kids in this classroom. They're going to be functional, totally functional. Right? You guys are all totally functional.
More or less some
Yeah, you don't have to call mom up on your, oh, can you send me $50? Wait a minute, I have to send my son $1,500 for classes. That's okay. I'll give you anything for education. About 10% of the people with intellectual disability have moderate to intellectual disability. They usually learn to talk during the preschool years, but later and more slowly than others. They're likely to show impairments in sensory motor development, their academic abilities are markedly low, and their social skills are likely to be limited. Can we recognize these kids? You bet. You can recognize them right away. As soon as even when they're children, you can recognize them. It's just like schizophrenia. If somebody's suffering from schizophrenia, you see it from infancy. They don't pay as much attention to everybody else. You know it. You know if somebody has autism. They have autism spectrum disorder, if they're someplace on that continuum. You know if somebody has schizophrenia. They don't act like everybody else. One of the things about kids, and this is one of the problems with this chapter, one of the interesting things about this chapter is all of these kids suffer. And the reason they suffer is because they're not the same as everybody else. And kids want everybody to be just like them, including vote for Trump or whatever. They want everybody to be a Republican, or they want everybody to be a Democrat, or they want everybody to wear a hat, or they want everybody to have basketball shoes, whatever. They want everybody to be the same. And these kids aren't the same. And for that reason, they suffer, because they are socially rejected to some extent. Even if they're relatively popular, people still know who they are. So this is kind of a problem. Now in the cases of intellectual disability, of course, everybody knows who these kids are, because they don't speak as fast, they aren't as articulate as the other kids, they can't do math, they're disruptive. So there's something about these kids that makes them different. And for that reason, of course, they will suffer to some extent throughout the rest of their lives. So, but we know who these kids are. We can identify them at birth, and we know that they are different. These kids, of course, they have an intellectual disability, and because of that, of course, sometimes it's relatively severe. Of course, this is the moderate intellectual disability. These individuals are just they're a lot slower than the last group that we were talking about, but they aren't as slow as some of the people that we're going to talk about in just a second. As adults, they contribute to their own support in protected environments, and this is really kind of neat, because these people really want to be on their own. They want to get married, they want to have children of their own, they want to be independent. And that's really cool, because I've got relatives who have IQs in the 160 range. Damn it, we can't get them to live by themselves. Bastards. Laziest. I swear. That's why I like it so much down here. I don't have to be around my crazy relatives up in Indiana. About 3.5% of those with intellectual disability have severe intellectual disability. Impaired development is apparent in infancy or early childhood in the form of poor motor development, minimal speech, and often the presence of physical deformities. These individuals are the ones that do have deformities as compared to the other two groups that we just talked about, the ones with mild and moderate intellectual disabilities. These individuals tend to have deformities. And because of that, sometimes they need to be institutionalized. Many can learn to talk in simple words and phrases and learn elementary health and grooming habits. And this is really what you want. This is what you want. Your kids they know how to go to the bathroom by themselves. They don't call you into the bathroom to wipe their butt. Of course not. Your kids are fine. How old is your son? 18? And you're trying to move him out of the house already?
No.
Oh, sure, get rid of the kid. I got rid of both my kids at 18.
I'm just like...
But they wanted to leave. They said, Dad, you're the most boring person in the world. Not only am I boring, but I embarrass them as frequently as I possibly can. I'm sorry. I'm sure your son is a wonderful person.
He is. He's in like
he's gonna go to
honor society, and he was like...
He's going to go to college.
Finley.
Where's he going to go to school?
We're thinking NMSU, because he was really good at basketball, you know, so Little Bighorn, surprisingly, was trying
really?
to recruit him, and I said, no way.
Not,
But,
those damn
NMSU,
crow?
Yeah.
You would send him up there?
No, I would send him no clothes. So either NMSU or maybe he just might start here.
Oh, sure, that'd be
through
great.
his generals.
We'll take care of him.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he can live with you.
No.
Yes, he can. As adults, they may learn to perform certain routine tasks, but generally require complete supervision and economic support. And of course, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the Agape Ranch up in Montana. That was for individuals with severe intellectual disability and people with moderate intellectual disability as well. That was the Agape Ranch. And of course, we got to take care of these individuals on a relatively frequent basis, especially this group, because they had all kinds of interesting medical problems. Most of it had to do with their physical deformities. But a lot of times they will have congenital problems. Their hearts aren't growing properly, or they have other organs that have problems. Their kidneys is a big one. Sometimes they will have digestive problems. For one reason or another, and for that reason we got to deal with these guys a lot. The smallest group, thank God, the smallest group of those with intellectual disabilities are about 1.5% of this group of individuals, and they are the ones with profound intellectual disabilities. They have extreme deficits in both intellectual and sensory motor functions, as apparent, and it's apparent early in life, of course, because you can see this at birth. They have severe physical deformities, sometimes multiple sclerosis, sometimes cystic fibrosis. They have a lot of horrible, interesting problems and medical problems that are relatively difficult to take care of. Usually total care is required for the rest of their lives. They will potentially be institutionalized, or they can live at home if you can train the parents to be able to take care of them. But they've got a lot of interesting problems, these individuals. Biological influences that may cause intellectual disability. Heredity, of course, it's genetic. They inherited it from their parents. Alterations of embryological development. In other words, something happened in the womb. It wasn't genetic. It was something that the mother did, or something that happened. She got punched in the stomach or whatever. Pregnancy or prenatal problems. Acquired medical conditions that they acquired later. Environmental influences, growing up in an environment with little stimulation. So we can have intellectual disability that is caused by an environment that isn't stimulating. And we see this a lot in third world countries. Individuals that actually, if they had been stimulated as a young child, they potentially would have turned out without any problems at all. No specific causal factors are identified in 30 to 40% of the cases of intellectual disability. Normally when something like this happens, we diagnose them, we'll do a workup and try to determine what it was that caused the problem so that we can stop it from happening again.
You know, with my family, I have a big family, but back home, we've never had any white in my bloodline for a long time. So my uncle married a white lady.
Did you see how she said that?
I mean, no offense or anything, but my uncle married a white lady, and when they got married, they had kids. Well, the retardation, I forget how you say it.
Intellectual disability.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was introduced into our family, so my cousin, she had it, and then my other cousin, Mary Ellen, she had 4 kids, and one of her daughters had one of those long torsos,
Right.
and short bodies, but she also had eczema, asthma, and I mean,
You mean everybody in the family?
pretty much.
You got one white relative and all of her offspring are...
Yeah, and so my cousin Cecile...
Are you writing this down, Francis? Don't ever get...
Well, okay, listen, my cousin Cecile, she lived a normal life, she got married, everything, she had kids, she had 2 kids. Well, her first son is deaf, but not to the point where, they put those things in his ears now he can hear.
Sure.
Okay, and so her next son, he wasn't born with any physical deformities, but he had a brain tumor, and so there's just a lot of problems. And what my grandma would say is, it's because he married that white woman. That's what they would say in, you know, in that general population of the family right
Sure.
there. You know, do you think that's true?
Wilson agrees with you, with your grandma. Wilson will tell you not to do it. Do I think that that's true? Actually, we see a lot of interracial offspring that don't turn out bad at all. I mean, this is a rarity. Obviously, he married the wrong woman.
Yeah.
His pickers broke, so he picked the wrong chick. I'm sure he could have found somebody, I don't know who, but he could have found somebody to marry, no matter how pale she was, which he wouldn't have had any problems at all. It's you know, it's genetic. I've got idiot, smart people in my family, and evidently that lady has some interesting problems as well. It's really kind of fascinating, though. I don't want to pick on white people, since all my kids are white. They're not just white, they're really white, okay? Now, we checked our DNA, we're all from England, France, and Germany, and Scotland, and Ireland. I know, it's really kind of weird. So the answer is, yeah, you can pick the wrong person. Wait until we start talking about Jewish people marrying the wrong people. You know, if you have a genetic problem in your family, yeah, it's going to happen. You know the Hutterites, they've got all kinds of interesting problems. What do you guys call them?
Hutterites.
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 Hutterites. Hutterites.
Hutterites.
Hutterites. They've got all kinds of interesting problems, but we're dealing with a population that for 250 years, it's only been 11 families that are marrying with one another. So the genetic problems they have are really fascinating. Interested, strange shaped torsos. If you've ever, well, they hardly ever take their shirts off, but.
Well, they come to our reservation and they pay our guys to mate with their females. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Nobody ever paid me to mate with their females. This is irritating.
Seriously, they do.
Man. All they need to do is, well, they got all kinds of strange rules.
Yeah.
It's a religious group. What are we talking about? Okay, so we haven't found any factors in 30 to 40% of it. PKU, this is something that I used to do. PKU's fetal ketonuria is what PKU stands for. When you process protein, all of us, all of us in this room, when we eat protein, if we all had a pork chop, is it okay if we eat pork chops? I don't like mutton, so I was just thinking pork chops. We all eat a pork chop. One of the things that happens is, of course, pork has protein in it. That's what the muscle mass is made of, is protein. So when you break it down, one of the waste products of protein metabolism is phenylalanine. Of course, a baby, when the baby drinks her first milk, there's protein in the milk to grow her bones up, and the first time she drinks milk, if she can't get rid of this waste product, it will build up in her brain and it will cause mental retardation. Okay, so the waste product of breaking down the phenylalanine is phenylketonuria, and it's toxic. It's toxic to the brain. Now, because we metabolize all this stuff without any problems whatsoever, we can consume protein, and we will produce the phenylalanine, and then the phenylalanine will be broken down into PKU, and then PKU will be metabolized, and so it doesn't cause us any problems at all. Everybody in this room, nobody has any problem with this, because if you did have a problem with this, they would have put you on a special diet when you were a baby. It's a special low phenylalanine diet. Now, one of the interesting things is if you drink pop or drink anything, it'll tell you if there's phenylalanine in your drink, especially soda pop. What is that? Is that apple juice?
It's tea.
Oh, it's tea. I don't know if that'll say has phenylalanine in it or not. The diet drinks have phenylalanine in them. So those individuals can't eat that because they can't break it down. But one of the things we have to do is we have to determine if that is the situation. Does it say anything about phenylalanine on there? They're not diet drinks, I guess that's why.
No.
Yeah, it's just a dog crap. Anyway, now we've discovered that the flaw is on the 12th chromosome. It has to do with protein metabolism. And the first thing that you do is, after the baby is born, after the first meal, 24 hours after the first meal, we have to check this because this toxin can build up in their brains relatively quickly. So we need to determine if they have a positive PKU or not. So one of the first things that happens to the baby, and I know this sounds like a horrible, horrible thing to do, but we have to draw their blood. And the way we draw their blood is to poke a couple holes in their heel and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, 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 till we get enough blood out. And if you're good at it, it doesn't take you very long at all. But I swear, I've trained people and they are so bad. They just don't want to hurt the baby or they don't want to squeeze. It's like milking a cow. Have you ever milked? Well, if you've ever milked a cow, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you have to kind of pull down and squeeze. And, okay, you have to squeeze. It's like driving a standard transmission car. You have to push in on the gas and let off on the clutch about at the same time. It's the same way with milk. Anyway, I was really good at it. It's the only thing I can brag about. Fragile X syndrome is where there is a nearly separated segment of the low arm of the X chromosome. Fragile X syndrome is due to the mutation on the FMR1 gene site. And as you can see, this is an X chromosome, but a chunk of it's about to break off down here. And this causes a lot of intellectual disability. Fragile X syndrome is the most common heritable condition associated with intellectual disability. In the old days, it was PKU, but we've cured that. Why? Because we draw those babies as soon as they're born. Well, as soon as they eat, we will draw their blood. And they can't leave the hospital until we draw their blood. The problem is the individuals that are born at home and we never get to see. We need to make sure that they don't have a problem. Anyway, that used to be the #1 cause of intellectual disability in the United States. Now it's Fragile X, as exciting as that is. Fragile X syndrome can be detected through blood tests or prenatally through amniocentesis. So if they think that there may be a problem with the pregnancy, they will stick a needle into the mother's uterus and draw out some of it into the placenta, and they'll draw out some of the fluid, and then they can do the test. It doesn't hurt that much. I understand. I've watched them. Of course, they've never done it to me because, well,
I don't think they do that anymore.
Oh.
They don't do that anymore, right?
Well,
With
they
the
Amniocentesis?
still do, it's just you consent to it or you don't.
yeah.
But if you don't consent to it, it's kind of like they won't help you if anything happens.
Yeah, it's usually only if there seems to be a problem. There might be a problem. If you have a history of something in your family, they will do this. Or the baby's not growing as rapidly as they think it should. Usually that has to do with the fact that you're not exactly sure when you got
Do
pregnant.
that too if there's a little bit more amniotic fluid than usual too? to see
Oh, I've never seen that, but then again, I haven't been in the game for about 20 years. So.
Like a difference of heart rate too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking for a problem, and we can detect it with an amniocentesis. We can also do a blood called what is that test? There's a blood test you can take to find out if they have spina bifida or Down syndrome. Males are disproportionately affected by this condition because they carry only one X chromosome, and as I showed you before, if it's a male, then he's not canceling out the bad stuff on the X chromosome. If it's a female, of course, if one X chromosome looks like this, they've also got an X chromosome that looks normal. And for this reason, if you get a male with Fragile X, their intellectual disability is more severe than the female, because the female has a normal X chromosome to go along with their Fragile X chromosome. And that cancels out a whole bunch of stuff. So we rarely see a female with severe Fragile X. Yeah, only males. Galactosemia, this is kind of fun. Maple syrup urinary disease. Why in the hell would you call it? I know. You've heard of this stuff, okay. What time is it? Oh, it's almost time to leave. Well, I'll start here next time because I got a really cool story about eating pancakes in the nursery. You like my pancake story? I know, I got into so much trouble for that. I'll see you guys next time. We have 2 more lectures. I'll try to cover the rest of this. How am I doing? That's not bad. I'll probably get through the rest of this, but not into another chapter, I would think.
Are we gonna have the exam on the one that we just did?
Yes. I just wrote the exam